Faction: the Japanese Army, the First World War. The Imperial Japanese Army was made up of one-year volunteers and of conscripts aged 17 to 40 who had to serve for 2 to 3 years. Emperor Taisho was commander-in-chief. The financial costs of the Russo-Japanese War from 1904 to 1905 prevented the army from expanding its targeted number of divisions. Meanwhile, before the war started, General Tanaka Gichi and other officers urged the seizure of German concessions in China as part of their expansionist ambitions. The Japanese joined the Allied powers against Germany and its empire on the 23rd of August 1914. However, they were initially hesitant because of Germany's mentorship and training of the Imperial Japanese Army for decades. On September 2nd, 1914, the Japanese Army launched their attack on Tsingtao after landing at China's Shandong province. There were around 29,000 men for this operation, mainly from the 18th Division. By November 7th, German units there surrendered, and the Japanese occupied Tsingtao. The Imperial Japanese Army also participated in the Siberian Expedition in July 1918, alongside the American Expeditionary Force and other Allied powers in support of White Russian forces during the Russian Civil War. The Japanese Army's role in the expedition was to rescue the Czechoslovak legions trapped in the Russian Far East. Following the end of the war, Japan, which benefited greatly from the war, was met with suspicion by its allies because of its imperial ambitions and unwillingness to help in ending the stalemate in Europe. Approximately 800,000 men were mobilized in the Japanese army during the war, with a low casualty rate of 4,661 killed or wounded. Watch our other videos to learn more. Get your copy of Simple History, World War I, available on Amazon now. Thank you guys for all your support on the Simple History YouTube channel. If you enjoyed, please consider visiting our Patreon page. There, you can show us your support for the channel by donating and make a huge difference in what we're able to create for you. Plus, you can get early access on upcoming videos. So let's keep it growing, and thank you for being part of this amazing community.
German anti-tank solutions. Reversed in K bullets. World War I. Tanks were a nasty surprise for the Germans when they made their entrance onto the battlefield in 1916. While grenades were effective at close range, the Germans quickly sought ranged solutions to disable enemy tanks. Reversed bullets. Rifle and machine gun rounds simply bounced off tank armor, so the first attempt at giving German riflemen an anti-tank solution was the reversed bullet. This idea had been developed in 1915 as a way of penetrating enemy sniper shields. Taking a normal 7.92 by 57mm Mauser round, the slug was twisted off and additional propellant was added. They were then carefully reinserted backwards into the casing, giving them a blunt nose. These rifles had to be carefully chambered to prevent misfires, but could be fired from a standard rifle. The reversed rounds could penetrate armor at close ranges, potentially hitting a crew member, and would not break off like the pointed end of a regular round. They may also create spall, a spray of metal fragments inside the tank. The reversed bullet was not a great solution, however, as it could often damage the rifle or injure the person shooting it. K bullets. The Germans developed the 7.92 by 57mm armor-piercing bullet known as the K bullet. They had a tool steel core and were able to be fired from a machine gun or rifle. The range, at about 100 yards, was a lot more effective than a reversed bullet and had a 1 in 3 chance of penetrating 12 to 13mm thick armor. While K bullets were effective against early British tanks, it was less so against the Mark IV tank, which had thicker armor and entered the battlefield in 1917.
Watch our other videos to learn more. Get your copy of Simple History, World War I, available on Amazon now. Thank you guys for all your support on the Simple History YouTube channel. If you enjoyed, please consider visiting our Patreon page. There, you can show us your support for the channel by donating and make a huge difference in what we're able to create for you. Plus, you can get early access on upcoming videos. So let's keep it growing, and thank you for being part of this amazing community.
Medieval torture and punishment. The medieval period saw brutal, violent, bloodthirsty punishments for criminals. From stealing to murder, the law had no fixed rules. Let's look at some of the methods and devices used to inflict agony to torture and punish. The pillory. The pillory was a form of public shaming and humiliation. The prisoner would place their neck and wrists through holes in a hinged wooden board, therefore trapping them in place for everyone to see. Passers-by would then mock, spit at, or throw rotten vegetables or animal excrement at the criminal. There was also the danger that the criminal could be killed when the crowd became too violent, whilst throwing stones or bricks. Thumb screws. This device would cause agony for the victim by pressing the thumbs in with a metal screw. As the victim's fingers were slowly crushed, a confession was extracted. The rack. The rack was a large rectangular wooden frame constructed with a roller at both ends. The criminal had their ankles fastened on one end and their wrists to the other. The torturer cracked a handle to stretch the victim during interrogation, creating excruciating pain as limbs stretched from the body. The further the torturer went, the higher the chance of dislocation of muscles and ligaments, and loud popping sounds. And if they still failed to extract a confession, a ripping of limbs from the body. Breaking wheel. With the breaking wheel, the victim would have their limbs tied to the spokes and revolved while the torturer hit them with an iron hammer, mangling their arms and legs and breaking their bones. They were then left out in the sun to the crows, burning at the stake. A horrific form of execution for blasphemers, thieves, and witches would see them burnt at the stake. Usually the condemned would die from suffocation before the flames started to burn their flesh. The suffering of the condemned could be prolonged by the executioner by making the fire small, causing loss of blood and heat stroke. Iron chair. This instrument of torture was covered in spikes on the seat, back, and armrests. When the victim was forced to sit on the chair, the spikes pushed into the flesh, causing extreme pain, and blood loss occurred when they sat out of it. Subscribe for more history videos. Click the notification bell to get notified when a new episode is out.
Thank you guys for all your support on the Simple History YouTube channel. If you enjoy it, please consider visiting our Patreon page. There, you can show us your support for the channel by donating and make a huge difference in what we're able to create for you. Plus, you can get early access on upcoming videos. So let's keep it growing, and thank you for being part of this amazing community. The Plague Doctor, the 17th century. In Italy, 1656 through 57, devastating outbreaks of bubonic plague in Naples, Rome, and Genoa killed approximately 200 to 400,000 people. It's unknown where this deadly plague originated, but it's said to have spread from Naples, where restrictions and precautions were non-existent. In these cities, plague doctors were hired to treat plague patients, especially for the poor who could not afford treatment. The doctor's costume was designed to protect them from what was thought of as evil smells or bad air, which was seen as the cause of infection at the time. This is now known as the medically obsolete miasma theory. In reality, the plague was caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, which exists in fleas found on rats. The infected would have flu symptoms followed by swollen and painful lymph nodes, gangrene, and vomiting of blood, with death following within a week from infection. Some historians point to Charles Delorme as the inventor of the costume, which was modeled after soldiers' armor. The most striking feature was a bird beak-like mask with crystal glasses. The mask was more than aesthetic and acted as a respirator filled with dried flowers or spices, which the doctor breathed through, protecting them from contagions. The doctor would also wear a long Moroccan leather gown that tucked into the mask to prevent contact with the patient, and the surface was waxed to prevent miasmas sticking to the surface. A friar named Father Antero Maria da San Bonaventura observed that those who worked in the plague house while wearing the waxy robe did not catch the disease. He noted that it stopped fleas nesting on the person and was therefore close to discovering the true reason behind the plague. Unfortunately, he discounted the fleas as merely an annoyance rather than carriers of the disease. And furthermore, as the clothing didn't protect the wearer from miasmas, he would discount the value of waxed robes as well. The doctor would also wear gloves, boots, and a wide-brimmed hat to show his profession, and hold a wand or cane to examine and issue instruction without touching the patient. Methods of treatment for the miasma, which was really the plague, were ineffective. Remedies included bloodletting and the use of leeches on the affected areas. Prescriptions of toads or spiders were also given to absorb the bad air. The plague doctor's appearance was quite terrifying for patients, as it was a sign of impending death, and they were kept out of the way of the public due to the nature of their profession. Thank you for all your support on the Simple History YouTube channel. If you enjoy the channel, please consider supporting us at Patreon. Let's explore the Great Wall of China. The Great Wall was conceived by the first emperor of China, Emperor Qin Shi Huang, in the 3rd century BC. He wanted to keep barbarian nomads from getting into the Chinese Empire. The project cost a lot of money and required a massive army of soldiers, convicts, and commoners as workers. The wall stretched from Shanghai, Guam, over 3,000 miles west into Gansu province. Not much is left of this wall today. The Great Wall, as you know it, however, came from the much later Ming Dynasty. It was built from the 14th to the 17th centuries AD to defend China from Mongolians and Manchurians. Wheelbarrows, rolling logs, and winches were used by forced laborers and banished criminals to move the sandstone bricks. The Ming Wall extends from west to East China for 8,850 kilometers, or 5,500 miles. In 1987, UNESCO designated the Great Wall a World Heritage Site. Today, the Great Wall is a popular tourist destination, and visitors like to pose for pictures, admire the views, and walk along the wall. Some like to hike and climb unrestored wild wall sections, though these can be very dangerous. Oh, and contrary to popular belief, you can't see the Great Wall of China from outer space. Subscribe to our channel for more videos. Get your copy of Simple Geography, China, available on Amazon. Overview of World War II. The war in Europe began in September 1939 when Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler invaded Poland. Using blitzkrieg tactics, the country was quickly overtaken. The world was shocked. Britain and France responded by declaring war on Germany, but took little action. This became known as the Phony War. But in 1940, German offensives rapidly defeated Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. The British Army, meanwhile, was on the retreat, being evacuated from Dunkirk. Britain, alone, was attacked by Germany during the Battle of Britain and the Blitz. However, the Luftwaffe failed to defeat the RAF. In June 1941, Hitler invaded Russia
under the codename Operation Barbarossa, and in December 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, bringing the USA into the war. Germany, Italy, and Japan formed the Axis powers, while Britain, Russia, and the USA made up the major combatants on the Allied side. In 1942, the Nazis implemented their final solution, a plan to exterminate all Jewish people. Critical battles followed that would dramatically change the course of the war. These were Midway in the Pacific Theater, June 1942, El Alamein in Egypt, November 1942, and Stalingrad in Russia, January 1943. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, the Allies launched Operation Overlord, invading Normandy, France. The Red Army advanced in the east and was the first to reach the German capital of Berlin. Germany surrendered in May 1945, shortly after Adolf Hitler committed suicide. On 6th of August 1945, the Americans dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Japan surrendered on VJ Day, 15th of August 1945. The war was over. World War II lasted from 1939 to 1945 and remains the most geographically widespread military conflict the world has ever seen. Subscribe to see more fun history videos. Get your copy of Simple History, World War II, out today.
Industrial Revolution, 18th to 19th century. The economic developments of the 1800s saw the development of agrarian and handicraft economies in Europe and America transform into industrial urbanized ones. The term to describe this phenomenon would be known as the Industrial Revolution, and was first used by French writers but made popular by English economic historian Arnold Toynbee. The Industrial Revolution was underpinned by the Agricultural Revolution. From the mid-18th century to the mid-19th century, agricultural production increased significantly. The huge increase in food output supported the expansion and sustained a large population and boosted trade. The increased use of machines over human or animal power in farming also meant that less farm workers were needed, and they could leave the land to industrial towns. Better metals and richer fuel also contributed to industrialization by creating the steam engine, an integral machine to industrialization which powered factories, locomotives, and ships. The new steam engines used coal and iron, both in their construction and as fuel, increasing demand for these resources. Roads, canals, and railways changed Britain dramatically, connecting Britain and allowing goods to be sent over long distances. Visually, the revolution was clear in the new industrial towns, with smoking factories dominating the skyline. The cities were horrible to live in, overcrowded and dirty with dangerous conditions in the factories and strict rules and punishments. The Industrial Revolution saw mechanization in factories of the textile industry, which was previously manufactured in the home, creating the term cottage industry. Now, production could be increased on a large scale because of new inventions such as the spinning mule and the power loom. The iron industry developed with Henry Bessemer's inexpensive process for mass-producing steel. Iron and steel were key materials for constructing the tools and machinery, steam engines, and ships needed for the industrial progress. Industrial labor opportunities drew people to the cities from the countryside, to such an extent that in 1750 only 15% of the population of Britain lived in towns. By 1850, over 50% of the entire population of Great Britain lived in either a town or a city, and by 1900 it was 85%. London had 4.5 million people, Glasgow 760,000, Liverpool 685,000, and Manchester and Birmingham 500,000. Great Britain was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution and was the only mature industrial economy for a long time. Historians have speculated that this was because, as an island, there was relative peace and stability for Britain compared to mainland Europe. Rather than spending on a large defensive standing army, capital could be spent on other ventures, and there was confidence for investors. Native resources were also abundant and readily available for initial technological developments and inventions. Engineers and inventors were also respected and encouraged in British society and were backed by wealthy patrons. A powerful navy and an empire bringing in vast wealth from its colonies also contributed to the catalyst for industrialization before others. Nevertheless, Germany, France, Switzerland, Belgium, and the United States soon emulated Britain's industrial change, and by 1900, Britain would no longer be at the top, with the United States as the world's leading industrial nation in the 20th century.
Subscribe for more history videos. Thank you for all your support on the Simple History YouTube channel. If you enjoy the channel, please consider supporting us at Patreon.